So apparently there are just people out there that they didn't go to school or something and they're a manager and they prefer the IRR method to the MPV method because they like rates of returns or percentages better than dollar amounts. Now, that's not necessarily a logical reason for, them to wanting to have IRR, but apparently this is encountered a lot because it's included in the book. So, is there a better IRR measure? Because some people have to have their rates of return, even though MPV is the ultimate best method, and you should always politely say that to other people that are trying to make decisions like this. And there is something called the MIRR. It's the modified internal rate of return. And we find that in a kind of a complicated way, and it's kind of a pain to find. If you have Excel, it's really easy to find, but the way we're going to solve for it is, well, actually you can use Excel because this is an online class, but I'll show you how to solve for this in the financial calculator. So calculating the MIRR takes several steps when you're not using Excel. So the first step is you need the present value of all the cash outflows. And so there's just one, it's negative, and it's at time 0, and it's already a present value. So we've got that. Then we need to find the future value of all the positive cash flows, or the cash inflows. And so we have 10, 60, and 80. So we need to compound these into the future, and we find that the sum of those, because 80 is already at time 3, plus 80 plus 66 plus 12.1 is $158.10. So we have like the terminal value of the inflows, which is the same thing as saying it's the future value. And then we know that the n is equal to 3 because it's for 3 years, and we're just solving for the I that makes this happen. Except just keep in mind we use the correct reinvestment rate of 10%, which is the weighted average cost of capital, to get these future cash flows. And you'll see the answer that we'll get. But over here in your calculator, you would just make this a time value of money problem. So I would hit second, clear time value of money. I'll put $100 negative as my present value, this green box. The red box, the 158.1, I'll put as my future value. 3 years, 3 is in. There's no payment, so I just want to go ahead and hit 0 payment, and then hit compute I, and you see that we get the 16.5%. Now so the longest part for this question is to compound these cash flows into the future and add them up. Now in Excel, let me show you how to do that. I've already got this up. So I took those cash flows, 0, 1, 2, and 3, and then let me delete that. You just say equals MIRR. And then the first thing it's saying in bold down here is what are the values. So I highlight negative 100 down to 80, comma. My finance rate, they told me 10%. It's the weighted average cost of capital, and you always enter the same number twice here. The reinvestment rate is also assumed to be 10% for the problems that we do. And then I hit enter, and I get the answer of 16.5%. So I'm going to save that. That's, also a good idea. One thing that, if you were wondering about the IRR formula, it's just IRR, and then you highlight the cells, which actually isn't really only these two, but it doesn't matter. And then for MPV, you highlight, let's see, let me take this out so you can see this better. So for MPV, let me go back. You type in equals MPV, the rate, and I just chose a 5% discount rate for this made-up problem, comma, and then only the positive inflows that occur after cash flow 0. So I'm only going to highlight V4. So that's telling me if I just discounted $200 back one time period, I have $190.48. But that's not the net present value because it's not net of the cost. For some reason, Excel doesn't really do a true net present value. So to make it a true net present value, I have to go ahead and say plus this cell for negative 100 because I'm netting out the cost that way, and then I get the true NPV. And so that's just a few things to note with Excel. So now you know we would compare the 16.5% MIRR to the 10% weighted average cost of capital. And since it's greater than the 10%, we would accept this project. Now the only thing is that modified internal rate of return can still have problems, just like the internal rate of return. So if I pull up Excel again to illustrate that MIRR still has a problem, I've calculated the MIRR for these two projects, small versus big, and I have the same issue even using the correct reinvestment rate where I had 5% for both, where it's saying I should accept the small project because the MIRR is 100% versus, the big project that gives me more money. So let me highlight that in yellow. Now, that's just something that's still a problem. And that's why we always just say that NPV is the absolute best method. So why use the MIRR versus IRR? It helps. And then there's also, guess we didn't talk about this yet, but there's a multiple IRR problem, and the modified internal rate of return gets away from that problem. So I wanted to click ahead and just see. So the multiple IRR problem occurs whenever you've got more than one change in sign. So two or more changes in sign, we have the non-normal cash flows. If we were to calculate something in here, let me go to the cash flow register, second clear work. Let me put 100 negative as cash flow 0. Cash flow 1, I'll just put 50. And cash flow 2, I'm going to put 50 that's negative. And then I'm going to hit IRR and compute. And you see that I get an error message because I put in negative 100, positive 50, negative 50. So there were two changes in sign. And I can't calculate an IRR, but I could still calculate an MIRR with the two changes in sign. So one other point that I wanted to talk about is that this whole thing where people are using MIRR versus IRR. Apparently the business executives out there prefer to compare projects' rates of return to comparing their NPVs, like I mentioned. And the way that we got this information is that there was this, I guess you could say, an incident. No, I'm just kidding. In October 1989, at the Financial Management Association meetings, there were executives there from DuPont and Hershey, among other executives, and they all had reported that they switched from IRR to MIRR. Okay, so these are big companies, and these managers are using MIRR, and I just showed you a problem with MIRR. So when I said I don't know how this existed, I just found the reason why this existed. Now I know 1989 was a long time ago and you probably weren't born, but the book is pretty recent. I don't think they would leave that fact in there if they thought it had gone away. Now moving on.